All right, so today we're going to talk about something that gets overlooked a lot. America's first attempt at a government, before the Constitution. It was this bold, messy experiment that, let's be honest, kind of failed. But that failure was absolutely crucial because it paved the way for the country we know today. This is the story of the Articles of Confederation. So let's just start with this question because it gets right to the heart of the matter. Imagine for a second, you just fought a revolution to escape a powerful tyrannical government. What kind of government would you build to replace it? He'd probably be pretty paranoid about giving it too much power, right? Well, that's exactly the mindset we're talking about here. So, picture this. It's 1776. Independence has been declared, but the 13 colonies, now states, are in a really tough spot. They're in the middle of a war with the biggest empire on the planet, and they desperately need some kind of formal agreement to hold them together. The Articles of Confederation, which were finally ratified in 1781, were their answer. This was, for all intents and purposes, America's first constitution. So you have to ask, why was this first attempt so, flawed? The answer is pretty wild. The Articles of Confederation weren't weak by accident. No, they were designed to be weak on purpose. And to really get why, we need to get inside the heads of the people who wrote it.
I mean, think about it. These guys had just fought a bloody war to get rid of a king. The last thing they wanted was to create their own version of a tyrant right here at home. They were deeply, deeply suspicious of any strong central power that could slap on taxes, raise a big army, and tell them what to do. To them, a powerful government was the first step back towards everything they'd just escaped.
And wow, George Washington just nails it with this quote. As the commander of the army, he saw firsthand how fragile this new union really was. There was just nothing holding the states together. This idea of a rope of sand, it perfectly captures just how weak and flimsy this whole setup was meant to be. And that weakness, that intentional weakness, brings us right to the heart of the problem, the fatal flaw of the Articles. The idea that the states were everything, and the national government was, almost nothing. So the system they created was a confederacy. And that just means the states held all the real power. Think of it like a club where the members are way more powerful than the club president. The central government could only do what the states allowed it to do. It was completely at their mercy. And they didn't hide it. They spelled it right out in Article 2. Each state retains its sovereignty, freedom, and independence. Any power that wasn't specifically, explicitly handed over to the National Congress stayed with the states. The default setting was always state power. So you see, the goal here wasn't to create one unified nation. The document literally calls it a firm league of friendship. This wasn't a country as we think of it today. It was more like an alliance, a pact between 13 independent little nations that just agreed to cooperate on a few things, like, not getting invaded. Okay, so you can probably guess that this states first idea led to some major problems. Let's call them the three big cracks in the foundation, the things that made the whole structure start to crumble. We're going to walk through each of these. First off, the economy was an absolute train wreck. Second, there was literally nobody in charge. And third, the process for actually getting anything done was basically impossible.
Let's start with the money problem. James Madison saw this mess unfolding and he put it perfectly. The states were basically at war with each other economically. You had states slapping tariffs on goods from other states. It was total chaos. Every state just looking out for itself.
And to make things even crazier, everybody was printing their own money. You had a national currency plus 13 different state currencies, all with different values. Imagine trying to buy something from the state next door and having to figure out the exchange rate. It was a nightmare for business.
And here's the real kicker. The amount of taxes the national government could directly collect from the people was exactly zero. Nothing. To get money, Congress had to literally go around and ask the states for contributions. And you can guess how that went. States paid late, they paid less than they were asked, or they just didn't pay at all. The government was perpetually broke.
Then you've got the second major crack, a total leadership vacuum. Under the Articles, there was no president, no one to enforce the laws, there was no national court system to settle disputes between states, and maybe most importantly, no standing national army to defend the country. It was a government that couldn't really govern. This made the brand new United States look like a joke on the world stage. You can just picture a British ambassador showing up and scratching his head, asking, "So, who exactly is in charge here?" It was embarrassing, and it put America at a huge disadvantage.
The third weakness was just how impossible it was to pass laws. For any major decision, you needed 9 of the 13 states to agree. That means just 5 states, even small ones, could block a law that the vast majority of the population might have wanted. It was legislative gridlock by design.
But here's the most ironic part, the biggest flaw of all. The system was so broken, it couldn't even fix itself. To change or amend the Articles, you needed a unanimous vote. All 13 states had to agree. That meant one single state, say Little Rhode Island, could veto any attempt to fix the whole system. The government was trapped in its own flawed design.
Now, a government this weak and ineffective is just a ticking time bomb, right? Sooner or later, a crisis is going to hit. And in 1786, that crisis arrived, and it was a rebellion that laid bare all the fatal weaknesses of the Articles for everyone to see.
This was Shays' Rebellion. Out in western Massachusetts, thousands of farmers, many of them guys who had just fought in the Revolution, were losing their farms because of high taxes and crushing debt. So, led by a former Army captain named Daniel Shays, they rose up. They shut down courthouses and were threatening to march on Boston.
And the national government? It could do absolutely nothing. It had no money to pay soldiers and no authority to raise an army. The rebellion had to be put down by a private army, paid for by wealthy merchants from Boston. This was a massive wake-up call. The government couldn't even protect its own states from internal rebellion.
And again, Washington just captured the mood of panic that was sweeping the elite. He warned that the whole country was like a powder kick. Shays' rebellion proved that the nation was teetering on the edge of complete chaos and that the Articles of Confederation just weren't up to the job.
Shays' rebellion was really the final nail in the coffin. It was the shock to the system that forced America's leaders to say, okay, this isn't working. It led directly to the Constitutional Convention the next year. And that brings us to the big takeaway from this whole messy, failed experiment.
The Constitution was basically a direct answer to every single problem the Articles had. The framers went down the list. No power to tax? The Constitution gave Congress that power. No single leader? They created the presidency. States fighting over trade? The Constitution gave the federal government the power to regulate commerce. They built a government that could actually govern.
So, in the end, were the Articles of Confederation a total failure? Well, yes, as a government. But it was maybe the most important failure in American history. It was the first draft that showed the founders exactly what not to do. It was a crucial lesson in what a nation actually needs to survive and thrive.
And that really leaves us with one final thought. That central fight from the Articles, the tug of war between the power of the states and the power of a national government, it never really went away, did it? We are still having that exact same debate today, every time we argue about healthcare, education, or the economy. It's a powerful reminder that America's first flawed draft still echoes in our lives right now.